All right. Let's get fired up here.
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Read Rothbard Podcast. All right, I'm going to start over. Cut this shit out.
That was really good.
All right. Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Read Rothbard Podcast. My name is Daniel, and as always with me is Robert Johnson. How you doing, Robert?
You know what doesn't make any sense? Minarchism.
Minarchism. All right. Well, we can certainly talk about that subject as we talk about the film Zootopia. But before that, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So as you
All right,
know,
but it doesn't make any sense.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to the bottom of that one.
Okay.
So, housekeeping-wise, we've got, of course, the Read Rothbard Podcast. We've got readrothbard.com. We have a new podcast called Enemy of the State, and that is just lectures by Murray Rothbard. And we're posting those, a couple of them every week. Those are on Podomatic under Enemy of the State. It's on iTunes, Google Play Music, also on YouTube. So that's going pretty well. We've also got upcoming next week, right after Thanksgiving, is going to be the Tom Woods Liberty Classroom Black Friday weekend sale. So his offer is going to be 40% off of a product that's awesome. It's a really good deal. It's audio and video lectures for the U.S. history, the Constitution, Austrian economics, logic, things like that, like all the kinds of things that you'll probably be just talking about at the Thanksgiving dinner table with your crazy uncle and not know what to say exactly. But if you get Tom Woods Liberty Classroom next weekend, you'll have all the ammunition you need until Grandma or Mom shuts that shit down.
Which is what you will do, because nobody wants to listen to that shit all dinner long. Because we're in the minority, the people that are into this stuff, but most people just want to be able to shake their head at some dumb thing a politician said recently, probably going to be Donald Trump, and just move on. But we would actually want to engage the person, and if you want to engage the person, you won't find better arguments, most likely, except for here.
Right, just on the Read Rothbard Podcast, in between the cranberry sauce and the green bean casserole.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to check that out, the sale starts on Friday, right after Thanksgiving, and we have a little page about it at readrothbard.com/Liberty Classroom. So check it out, and that's it for housekeeping. So, Robert, you were saying minarchism doesn't make any sense, and we were going to talk Zootopia. So what do you got, man?
Okay, first a rant on minarchism, because it doesn't make any sense on any level. Any level, and this coming from someone who used to see I guess for a short period of time, I was a minarchist for a short period of time. I suppose I could call myself that. When I wasn't, I didn't like government, but I wasn't fully on board with the anarchy. And believe it or not, there are people who have heard the arguments, who are fully versed. They've read Mises, they've read Rothbard, they're into it, and they are still minarchists. In fact, Mises was a minarchist. So, but it doesn't make any sense on any level. Okay, so these are the two main points I have against minarchism, which make no sense to me. For on the minarchist side, the educated minarchists, like principled, I don't know, you can't say principled, but the minarchist that has heard the arguments, understands the positions, and is still a minarchist. Usually their main point is that you need somebody to protect private property rights. It's usually their main thing. They've got a bunch of different little arguments, but they're all terrible. The main thing they say is that you need somebody with guns to protect from other people with guns, or else you're just going to have some sort of warlord scenario and everybody's going to be violating everybody else's private property rights all the time. And the reason that doesn't make any sense is because you're saying that you need a state to protect private property rights. The problem is states only exist through violating private property rights. They only exist through theft. Theft is a violation of private property rights. So It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay. Second thing is the small government minarchist who just doesn't like government or thinks that the government should only do a certain number of things. It's not really not really principled on the whole private property rights thing, just that, well, we need like national defense and we need a few things like that. The problem with that is when you elect people to government positions, like you hire a representative or a president or a mayor or whatever, their only job, I mean, not necessarily mayor's only job, but like you hire like a representative or any kind of legislature person, their only job is to grow government. Their only job is to make laws. Making laws is job security. You make a law, well, somebody has to enforce that law. So you need to have enforcers. You have to hire enforcers. Are there enough enforcers? No. Well, let's create a whole new department to enforce these new sets of laws. And it just grows and spiderweb and the little tentacles, they spread out until they are covering the entire, just choking off the free market, right? So you give all these government people the guns and you say that you have the right to initiate force against peaceful people. And then you say, well, wait, limit yourself. No, just be a small government. So you hire people whose only job is to grow government and say, oh, no, wait, don't do your jobs. Just be small and do this certain things. There's never been in the history of the world a government that just sat there and did like 4 things or whatever. People like the Ayn Randian type people that say, well, government should only do these things. Never in the history, because their function is built in to grow. So that's my little mini rant on minarchism. It's just been in my thoughts recently just because it just doesn't make any sense to me. Daniel, if you have anything to add, or if you want to argue with me about it, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, let's argue it up. So your first point,
yeah,
which is they need to violate property rights in order to protect property rights. Do you think that there's a possible matter of scale to where that actually could work? So let's say that they have a hard cap on, hey, we're only going to steal 5%, and we'll protect the other 95% from anyone else, and we'll never go over the 5%.
Right, because like my second argument said, government doesn't grow, doesn't require more money, doesn't require more, so it'll never steal more than 5%.
If they are just sticking to the one thing, which so just forget
the utopian idea that they actually will just sit on their hands. You hire people to just sit on their hands and never introduce a new bill or a new law or a new legislature, even though people whine and complain to them all the time to create new laws to protect them from X, Y, Z.
Yeah, so let's just keep with its protection of property and person for a small fee. You don't have a choice in paying the fee, of course, and no one can compete with the monopoly provider because that's what the government is.
Yes.
So, you know, if it wasn't a monopoly and it wasn't a required thing,
there wouldn't be a government.
And I'd be all for it, and it would be great. They'd be competing for
sure,
it.
Yeah. I was recently reading a treatise on anarchy where the guy's basically his position was, hey, look around. There are private security firms all over the place. There are private security firms at universities, at malls, and there are bodyguards for people. There are probably the percentage of security that happens is probably greater in the private sector than it is in the public. I don't know if that's true. I've heard like the New York police force is actually one of the larger armies in the world, but maybe that's just true in the United States. I don't know, but all over the place there's private security forces.
I've heard a similar thing. Ed Stringham gives a good presentation about private security, and I think that is right, that private security actually outnumbers government security by a pretty wide margin. And also they, as they're providing service to customers, they can't overstep their bounds and get super violent or shoot people without cause and all of those other bad stuff that happens when there's a monopoly in the provided service.
Right. How often do you hear or see headlines about private security forces gone crazy and rogue and murdering and killing people all the time? But if you can't avoid seeing stories about cops killing people all the time.
Yeah. Now, I guess it's not actually a monopoly, right, if we're saying that the private security is actually larger? Or is it that because not everything is technically government space or property, there's enough private areas that a private security force, even though they exist, they aren't. It doesn't change the fact that government police is a monopoly. What do you think on that?
Well, just that private security forces they don't initiate force. They're defensive in nature, whereas cops initiate violence in order to fund themselves. I mean, if there were, I guess I'm answering the question in my mind, not the one you asked. But if there were like private highways and they had their own like private police force that pulled people over for doing certain things on these private highways that was known, I wouldn't have a problem with that. You're on somebody else's property. You've got a contract essentially to use that property in a certain way.
Right, yeah, so like a DUI rule would be fine. Hey, if you have blood alcohol over X amount, you can't go on this highway. It's my highway.
Mm-hmm.
And then highway, Acme Highway over here would say, oh, yeah, come on down. We got guardrails on the, bump, like you're bowling with bumpers, that bumper bowling.
Yeah, man, you get bumpers all the way down the road. And they're just one way, so you don't have to hit oncoming traffic. No problem, just go.
Yeah, so I guess we're saying that there is still a government monopoly on the police function other than in some private areas, like Disneyland or the mall. But not that malls have a great track record. Like you walk around there and you see some super old dude walking around with a ill-fitting uniform, carrying a walkie-talkie. And
that's a function of how dangerous his job is, right? I mean,
right. But then, of course, there've been mall shootings recently, the stabbings in Minneapolis. Some bad things do happen, and I guess it's just not enough to warrant a larger protective force or something.
I would say so. Yeah, it's actually very, very rare. So, and a lot of security forces are more security theater. I mean, if you really want to go in and hurt somebody, you can generally, avoid the cops and get through it and whatever and be smart enough to do what you want to do. The fact is it just doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, I guess there's enough security to maybe minimize the spur-of-the-moment type stuff. But yeah, I mean, if anyone's determined to do something, they will find a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like we have a lot of, vacation cabins out in this area, neck of the woods, and you talk about deterrence, like, okay, what can we do to lock up the place if you're going to be gone for several months at a time? And one of my buddies and I were talking about, what we do with my office, because it's a shipping container, I can lock it down with the doors, the cargo doors. And he's like, yeah, I mean, that's helpful, but, if anyone's super determined to get into anything, if they have enough time, they'll be able to do it.
Right. If you have enough time, enough resources, enough planning. Movies aren't necessarily the most realistic things, but those are essentially authors and writers thinking up ways to do things, which are semi-plausible.
Yeah, so someone's going to like Mission Impossible or Ocean's 11, my shit.
Yeah.
Jump in on a zip line with, all my lasers and my laser-headed sharks.
Right, and if you actually had something in there worth stealing that required all that, that necessitated all that protection, then go for it.
That's a good point. Like my wife and I have talked about this. How much stuff do we actually have anymore that is worth stealing? I mean, if you think about it, people used to break into cars to steal radios or stereos or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or people would break into houses to steal TVs or VCRs, things like that. Back when these things cost, like $1,000, $500, whatever, people could sell it super cheap or pawn it and then get enough money for their meth fix or whatever. But, I mean, now this shit is so cheap. Like, if someone were to break into my office right now, the only thing I'd really be worried about is the files that I have saved on my computer.
Right. And even then, with the cloud computing, it's not even that usually for a lot of people. Yeah. It's the free market drives down prices, man.
Yeah.
So, what do you really own that you really need to protect? And if you do, then you'll take that appropriate action.
Yeah, and it's awesome. Like, I have this 32-inch TV. Back when we were kids, a 19-inch was, like, big. I remember the TV you guys had when you were playing ColecoVision. That must have been, like, a 30-inch TV. I was like, good Lord, that's huge. And now I got this 32-inch TV. I got it for like $100 or $150, something like that. I just use it as a monitor. And if somebody were to steal it, I'd be more pissed off that they would like probably wreck my wall because it's mounted to the wall.
Sure, yeah. It's like when my sister kept getting her car broken into, in Seattle, when there was having a rash of those. And you'd see people would just, just leave their windows open, just say, please, just don't break the window. We don't care. The window is more of a pain in the ass to lose than whatever cheap piece of crap stereo we threw in there at the last minute because we replaced it 6 times. Yeah,
exactly. My car got broken into in my office building in Seattle in the parking garage, and they broke the window. And this is back when I still had a tape deck and a CD player in there, like built in. Toyota had that. And I had one of those tape deck converter things that you could plug into like an iPod.
Mm-hmm.
It would work to remove that. They just yanked on the wire and ripped the wire. So I still had the tape part, but not the wire part.
Sweet.
And then they popped the trunk and stole my sweaty gym clothes. They were in the gym bag. So I'm not sure they really worked out for them on that. But, I had to pay for a $300, $400 window out of that deal. And I lost some of my bowling patches from when I was a kid that I had sewn onto my backpack, which I had put my gym clothes in. Fuckers.
Yeah, in that treatise on anarchy, and I'll try and find it. I don't have it in front of me. It's written by some professor down in the South somewhere. He talks about the history of governmental police. And apparently, like, the first governmental cops were, like, in England, in London, in, like, I want to say, like, the mid to late 1700s or something like that. So and those are the first, like, cops, like, as an official, government-type force.
It's like the sheriff of Nottingham?
Like, way later than that. I mean, there were, like, sheriffs and, like, I don't know, magisters maybe, I don't know. But he talks about how there were, like, all kinds of, like, private courts and how long before public courts, government courts, took over, there were private courts and all kinds of, these little private courts that built up common law over the long term, long before government got involved. So just as a to say that we can't do it without government is kind of ridiculous because for most of human history we did do it without government. And it's only just when government takes over a thing and you get used to government doing that thing, you begin to think that government is the only thing that can do that thing. And it's just really just a fallacy.
Yeah, okay. So this all started with your not seeing the understanding of minarchism. Not that you don't understand it, but like it doesn't square, right? The circle doesn't square for you?
Right. It doesn't square for me. I see, fairly seemingly intelligent minarchists, and it's okay when you don't. I mean, well, people are busy, and they just like, well, I don't like government so much. That's not necessarily the people I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that understand the arguments, and I don't understand how they can look at my objections and go, yeah, but I still want a government.
Well,
call me utopian.
Do you think that there is potentially a scenario where it could function where the provider of the security would charge you an amount that would most likely be less than if you had no such security? Like, do you think that there's a space for that argument to where minarchism would be a better thing than no government at all? Like a small violation of property rights. Like a small violation to protect the rest of your property rights. Like you give an inch, and granted they will take a mile or more, but you give an inch and then you get to keep the rest.
I had a thought and then I lost it.
Now,
you think that there's a possibility for that to make sense to a person?
Yeah, like let's take government out of it and call it a protection racket by the mafia. So they say, hey, we need some protection money from you, or we're going to break your legs, but we're going to protect you from all these other fuckers who would take even more.
So they're making the argument that there are these other people that would come around and murder you, but we're going to do a really good job and protect you from all those bad people because we're the good people.
Right.
But we're bad people too, but we're just not as bad as these other bad people.
Like for a fee, of course. and you don't really have a choice.
Well, you have a choice to not pay, but then we're going to burn your place down.
Right, yeah. They're threatening you with violence. And if you pay them, they won't do the violence to you. I was trying to come up with a fancy word, and I blew it. Sorry.
Well, I've had arguments like this in the past with people saying that when you're faced with a violent person, you have to negotiate with them. And my argument to that is these people have already established that they are not going to honor their contracts. If they're threatening you in order to get a service, they're threatening you in order to get your money, right? They've already, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that these people have already established themselves as not trustworthy individuals. So
because there's an expectation of not committing violence against someone else. That's like a social norm. They wouldn't want violence put against them, just like you wouldn't either.
Right.
So they're violating that initially.
Right. So they're violating, if you want to call it some sort of a, I don't know.
Social norm. I mean, it's not a contract. I don't want to say it's a social contract, but it's like a social construct. Like, it's an accepted behavior to not commit violence against someone else, like universally acceptable. And not to bring Steph into it, but like they're violating that idea by threatening.
Right. So they've already established what kind of a person they are. So how can you trust to do business with them? How can you understand that they would honor any contract and only do as much as they say, or only ask for as much as you initially give them? They just establish themselves as untrustworthy individuals. So when you're dealing with a thug, you are under no obligation to honor any contract that is made, because any contract made under duress is null and void. That's an established common law thing going back forever.
All right, gun to the head. Whatever you choose isn't really a choice at that point.
Which is kind of funny. I was just watching, totally as an aside, but a weird thing that I just saw. I was watching an episode of Rome, HBO's Rome, that was on a couple of years back. And there's a situation where they catch somebody who was trying to poison somebody, and they're torturing him. And there's a line that the person says that was trying to had their life almost taken, and it said, any confession made without torture is null. I was like, what? So you have to torture a person in order for it to be accepted? Anyway, I thought that was weird. I can't imagine that was really the norm back then. Maybe it was. I don't know.
Yeah. That reminds me of, and I know we're not talking about this movie. We're supposed to be talking about this other movie, which we should get to. But in The Usual Suspects, where Kaiser Sose, they talk about how these people break into his home and they have his wife and kids at gunpoint, threatening their lives and threatening his life. And he shows these men of will what will really is, and he shoots his family. What do you think of that situation in regards to he had the gun to his head, so any decision that he made wouldn't be fully legitimate or moral, like by him choosing to shoot his family, because they were going to shoot his family anyway, right?
I don't remember the specifics, but that's generally the argument. The argument is generally like, we'll make a deal with you or something like that. We'll only kill like one of your kids. Is that the deal? You have to choose between your wife or your kid. Is that how it went?
Yeah, I don't exactly remember. They were trying to get maybe some information from him. I haven't watched this movie in a while, but I just remember that they're retelling the story to just show how much of a badass Kaiser Sose is, in that when his life and the life of his family is threatened, he chooses to take control of the situation and show these people threatening him that that's not a threat to him. Like, he'll just do it himself. He's that badass. And then he, kills all the assailants except for one, so that the story can be told.
Right. And as I recall, that movie was mostly him lying. But if it's true, are you asking me if this is like a moral thing?
Yeah, because there's a gun to his head, and then he chooses to shoot his family. And
I've got a gun in my hand?
Apparently, or at least the skills and ability to get one in your hands.
Well, if I got the skills and ability to get one in my hands, why wouldn't I just shoot the guys that are threatening me? I don't know. But let's say, for example, that my only option is to, this is a weird setup because we'd need to really know more.
Yeah, maybe we'll save this one for later. Because you're right. Like, if he has the ability to get a weapon and then be able to shoot his family, why not shoot the perpetrators first? Or, instead.
Yeah, and then if they happen to shoot him or his family, maybe one of his family members lives, I don't know. Yeah, we'd need to. Us badly remembering something from years ago that we haven't seen in years is probably not the best content.
Yeah.
We should probably move on to something a little more fresh in our memory.
Well, I do think that perhaps it was perpetuating the story of his
he was making up a legend for himself.
Right, his enigma, his legend. So
right.
For him, this guy was so badass he shot his own family instead, and he let one of the guys live to go tell about it. So his goal was to build that legend.
Right.
So I guess it does become a moral thing because he had the ability to prevent it, and he chose to execute it.
Right. If he really did have a choice to not do that, if the option presented itself to not do that, but he took it in order to make a mystique. But we're totally speculating. We don't.
Yeah, to become infamous and strike fear into the underworld or whatever.
Let's promise. Since we make promises, we don't fulfill them. Let's promise to do that movie at some point in the future.
All right, we promise to do The Usual Suspects, and we'll add it to our list of promises, probably a dozen or more by now, and we have fulfilled probably none of them so far. And if any intrepid listener chooses, you may document those promises and send them to us at daniel@readrothbard.com or robert@readrothbard.com, and we will be happy to peruse that list and see if there's anything on there that we can actually accomplish.
Yes. Not to liken us to politicians, but we make promises and then we don't fulfill them. So.
Yeah, well, we're like crows, like shiny. Oh, look over there, look over there.
It's true.
We get a good idea for like 5 minutes. We say we're going to do it on the show, like you were going to learn how to play the ukulele.
We're dogs chasing cars, okay?
Squirrel. All right, so let's get into Zootopia. We've already been talking about cops and private security, and Zootopia has a lot of cop thing to the premise. So why don't you walk us through a little bit of the premise, and we'll go from there.
All right, so Zootopia, it's a Disney movie from a year or so back, and this is a very well reviewed movie. I got to say it's probably one of my least favorite like Disney Pixar type movies ever. There seems to be, the social justice generation seems to be moving into the workforce now, and we're getting more of that influence in our entertainment. And I just got this whole feeling the whole movie was just like, this was written by some SJW. It might have been tempered with the older guard, the Lassiter and those kind of people, but, man, it rubbed me the wrong way. Anyway, so Zootopia is the story of this cute little girl bunny who wants to make a difference in the world. And how do you make a difference in the world? Well, you become a cop, because those are the people that make differences in the world. Not saying that cops don't sometimes. Anyway, so she moves to Zootopia from this little kind of hick town where her family is a bunch of carrot farmers. And in Zootopia, it's like this giant city that is divided into different climate zones. So you've got like the Arctic sector, you've got the tropical sector, you've got all these different temperate zones. There's even like a tiny little mouse city inside of the place. And she joins the police force. And she's super tiny, and there's never been a bunny cop before, because cops are like these big kind of tough animals. So you got like an elephant, you got like a tiger, like a water buffalo. Anyway, these big animals. So she's the first bunny, and her sergeant doesn't want her, so he sends her onto meter maid duty, and she's all bummed out that she's not like a real cop. But then she decides that she's a plucky go-getter and do-gooder type person, and she's going to be the best darn meter maid ever.
Those are the worst, those do-gooders.
Yeah, so she is the fastest. There's a montage sequence of her being the fastest, the best meter maid ever, where the meters are just ticking over, and she's there in an instant to put a ticket on the windshield. And she's like the good guy in the movie. But then they do show some of the irate drivers coming back to their cars and yelling at her, and she's just, sad. She's just doing her job, just enforcing the law. Why do these people not like her? So then she goes into this, she sees across the street, actually, while she's metering, a fox. And before she went to the Zootopia, her parents had given her this fox spray, like anti-fox repellent, because people are divided up into prey animals and predator animals. And predators are like 15% of the population, 10% of the population, something like that. And so she's got to watch out for these people, right? So she goes across the street and follows this fox, who's obviously up to no good. And he walks into this popsicle store, or like ice cream store. And he orders a popsicle, and the elephant behind the counter is like, "Get out of here, we don't serve foxes." And this is like, makes the little bunny cop angry. And I'm like, so they're going to demonize the shop owner who just doesn't want to associate with somebody, who has the right to refuse service to anybody they want, but who's obviously a terrible person. So the cop comes.
Unless it's an SJW favored group, right? Like, you got to bake the cake.
You got to bake the cake. You got to serve the fox. You got to do whatever. So she steps in and threatens the shop owner with not being sanitary enough, because the elephants scoop the ice cream with their trunks and then stick it on an ice cream cone. And they're supposedly supposed to be wearing some sort of a trunk glove. So she threatens the elephant with that and says, "How about you just serve the fox and I'll forget about it?"
Oh,
so they do.
That's pretty underhanded.
Yeah, she's already getting into it. So they do, and then the fox leaves. It's actually, he's buying this fox, the popsicle, for this little baby, this little child dressed up in an elephant costume. And so he leaves, and they have a little exchange. And then she goes about doing her job more, and then she sees him kind of doing something like not exactly what she expected. He takes the popsicle, and he goes to a part of town where he's melting down the popsicle, and then he's collecting the juice into these big buckets. And him and his partner, like the kid, is actually his partner, and they're putting the buckets into the back of a van, and then they drive off. And she's like, "What? I bought that for you and your kid, and now you're making a business out of this, or what are you doing with it?" So she follows them to the popsicle, the frozen part of town. And the guy takes the buckets, and in the snow, he makes these little paw prints. And then he pours some of the juice into each of the paw prints and lets it freeze, and he makes little smaller popsicles out of it. And he goes and he sells these popsicles to like these gerbils or hamsters coming out of their like law firm or whatever. So he's making a profit. Turns a fair amount of money out of it. And she goes and confronts him about it, saying that, "Hey, you lied to me. You weren't, buying that popsicle for your kid." He's like, "Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I run a business." And she needs him to help her find an otter who has gone missing. And that's like the big plot of the movie. And he doesn't want to. And so she coerces him into helping her by threatening him with taxes. Like, he hasn't been paying taxes on his street business, his popsicle selling business. And he's like, "Okay, fine. I will do this so that you don't throw me in jail or fine me or, rob me of more money." And, at first the movie was kind of interesting in that I was like, well, this is maybe this is like free market, or maybe this is just like a cute little gag joke, because in the whole movie you've got this beautiful free market system, because all this like public transportation, I don't know, you can't call that free market, but you've got all these different systems catering to different consumers. You've got these little gerbil, little hamster tubes that the hamsters go in. And you've got 3 different doors on like a bus or on a train for different sized passengers. So you've got all these things that are specialized in catering to different free market, to market forces. But then it's, very not. I think it was more just like a cute visual gag that the writer or the artists were doing. So I was kind of bummed about that. But anyway, then the story goes along, and the whole time I'm just disgusted. I'm like hating on this bunny cop, which is something for me because I like bunnies. I think they're cute, and they did a really good job making her cute. But, man, she's just this little Nazi the whole movie. And then at the end of it, the fox that she has like coerced into joining her, ends up joining the police force. And I'm just like, gag me. The one redeeming feature of the movie is that the, spoiler alert, is that the villain is kind of like a surprise villain. You don't know it until the very end who the villain is. Supposed to be. I mean, I had my guesses, but it turns out it's like this mayor's assistant who, basically, sorry, let me back up. The whole plot line of the movie is that the otter is missing because the otter went crazy and it started attacking people. And there's this big fear that the predators, who are like 10, 15% of the population, are going crazy, and that it's just their biology that is turning them feral and that you have to be afraid of them. So there's some kind of like narrative where the bunny pisses off the fox because she says that, well, it's probably something to do with their DNA. And the fox is like, you think I'm going to be feral just because I'm a fox? You're just treating me because you're just because it happened, how I was born, you think you're going to treat me a certain way. Basically,
is that like a
argument?
Is that like a Steph Lady Gaga mashup?
Kind of, yeah. So it turns out
Steph Gaga.
It turns out that instead, it's actually just this assistant deputy mayor type lady who's just like this little sheep who is hiring some people to shoot different predators with this crazy toxin that's made out of flour. And she was using it to keep the population in fear, to keep them in power. So, which is a thing the governments do all the time. They're constantly saying that there's a boogeyman out there to get you. There's enemies, which they create, which really do want to hurt you sometimes. So that, that kind of redeemed it a little bit for me. But the most of the movie I just spent hating on this little rabbit because she was like this little authoritarian thug who's going around attacking people. And, she wanted to do change the world or whatever. And I wanted her to realize that she wasn't, helping people for the better. And then she was going to leave the police force, but of course she wasn't. So that was kind of my feelings on the movie. I'm a little bit conflicted. I wanted to either like it or hate it. And in the end, I'm just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces of it because it's an animated movie and I've got two young girls and they're always wanting cartoons. We watch a lot of Care Bears and Clifford and for whatever reason, a bunch of Halloween stuff, even now. But we've tried watching Zootopia a couple of times, and in the half watching, working on something else and sort of seeing it, it did seem like there was a lot of SJW type stuff, like a lot of she's the plucky underdog girl who's being, I don't know, like the odds are stacked against her because she's a girl.
Yeah, that's a narrative, right? Like there's the man, the patriarchy holding her down, that she can't do a thing because their parents don't want her to be a cop. They're like, this is a dangerous profession. We don't want you to be a cop. When they find out she's a meter maid, they're really happy about it. So, yeah, that narrative that, women just can't do a thing. And then so she's going to show them that she can do a thing.
Yeah, and then there's the 80s rock montage, right, that you mentioned, where she's being the best meter maid there ever was and catching people like as soon as the timer goes off, and she's running really fast, sprinting around, catching all of these people and outdoing the previous record, what have you.
Right.
Just to show how plucky she is and how much she's a go-getter to do good.
She's a go-getter. Yeah. Yeah, she's just going to be the best darn meter maid ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It does seem to be pushing that whole, hey, girls watching this movie, you're going to need to work harder than any guy because everything's stacked against you by the patriarchy. Misogyny!
Yes. Basically, yes. It's a racist, sexist world out there, and you're going to have to be just that good and work that extra hard to make it. I could see why it was a popular movie, why it was positively reviewed. For me, it didn't hit home. I missed the mark for me on many different fronts, from the police glorification to the SJW themes. It didn't hit home except for the whole government creating an enemy to fear, keep the population in fear. That I appreciated that.
Yeah, that's the old Orwell thing. The Ingsoc, like there's always a perpetual enemy, something to fear.
Oh yeah.
No, there was that redeeming quality with the fox who was being an entrepreneur and taking a good from one place where he could buy it at a certain price and then transport it elsewhere,
add his flavor to it. Yep.
reconfigure it, and earn a profit. So, there was a service that he was providing.
Except in the show, in the movie, they called it a hustle. He was hustling. They made it sound like he was doing a bad thing.
He was providing a service. He was providing the good to someone, to a group of individuals who otherwise would not have been able to enjoy it, right? Like, had he not done that, then those...
There was no other popsicle service for those gerbils.
Yeah.
Shown in the movie, yeah.
So...
He was providing a service, yeah. Now, there is the issue of... I don't really understand the whole point of him having his partner dress up as a little kid. Like, he had to have the little partner dress up as a kid in order to get the sympathy vibes in order to buy the elephant popsicle in the first place. It wasn't exactly clear if they were calling it a hustle by being an entrepreneur or calling it a hustle in that he kind of had her, because when he went to pay for it, I'll describe the scene as best possible. She walks in, she follows him into the store. He makes to buy a popsicle. The shopkeeper points to the sign that says, "We can refuse service to anybody, please leave," or whatever. He says, "Get out of here, Fox," or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, come on, I just want to buy this popsicle for my kid." So then she intervenes, and then he makes like he doesn't have any money. He goes, "Oh, my wallet," and he's about to leave, and then the cop goes, "Oh, let me buy it for you," and she pays.
Oh, okay.
Now, he didn't ask her to pay.
Right.
He didn't force her to pay, but he did set up a scenario where she felt sad or bad for the guy. Does that change your opinion of this?
It does seem like a hustle. It does seem like a
hustle, right?
In that respect. Like, I've had a situation where when I was working in office buildings in downtown Seattle, I would walk and get lunch, and there was one instance where a disheveled-looking homeless guy was carrying a takeout, like, styrofoam. I'm sure they're illegal now, so this dates me. It's probably 10 years ago. But he's walking on one side of the sidewalk, and I'm walking on this other side of the sidewalk, and it's a wide sidewalk. It's probably at least 10 feet wide. So it's not like he and I were going to brush elbows walking. But as we got closer and closer, he dove into my lane to initiate contact and then dramatically threw or flung his styrofoam container of leftovers onto the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately started complaining about, "Oh, man, my food, you knocked my food down, and I'm not going to be able to eat it now. I'm going to go hungry tonight. What are you going to do about my food?" Thinking that, I'm going to pay him for a meal, give him $10 or whatever so that he can eat. And,
right, that's a stone cold hustle, yeah. Yeah,
it's a total hustle. Like, he didn't even undersell it. He oversold it. So it became a little bit too obvious. It wasn't even like he was just, muttering, tottering around, looking the other way. It was like he initiated the contact. Like, he was trying to draw the foul, and the ref called a charge.
Right. Yeah, if you actually undersold it a bit, you might have actually maybe believed it a little bit.
Well, it would have been more believable, though I probably still wouldn't have done anything because I'm a cold-hearted bastard. But in that situation, he was committing a fraud. Like, he was with intent. I'm going to go bump into someone, throw this food on the ground, and try to get money out of them. Mm-hmm. So if the fox were going there with the kid to gain sympathy points with the intention of not paying, then definitely hustle. Definitely.
Would you say it's fraud?
Yes.
Even though he never asked her to pay?
False pretenses.
Okay. So the fact that he had the kid there, or the guy dressed up as a kid.
I mean, we're getting into some gray. It's not like he initiated violence, but he did misrepresent a situation with the intention of gaining favor, due to some circumstance that he manufactured.
Yes.
So she could certainly still give him the money if she falls for it, but I wouldn't blame her for not giving the money, if she caught wind of it.
Okay, so are you giving the movie a pass on it, calling it a hustle now?
Yeah, I don't think it's a hustle because he's taking a good from one area, transforming it in some way to provide it in a more easily consumed fashion for another group of people. Had he been buying the ice cream cone for $5 and then parting it out and selling it for a total of 10 or 20, I would have been like, good job, go for it.
Right. Yeah,
But
it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear why he needed, because he said later on in the movie, he says, "Listen, lady, I make like $200 a day." He could easily afford the $15 for the popsicle. If he makes $200 on his $15 popsicle, it doesn't. It doesn't.
They actually provided numbers, so like the popsicle was $15, and he only did it once a day, and it was $200 that he would make.
Well, and his partner made the other $200. So he turned $15 into $400.
Holy shit!
Talk about a return.
Yeah, what's with the hustle, man?
He's a great businessman.
I would do that all day long. Day long.
Yeah, it's not. It seems like they just want to establish him as a disingenuous character in order for him to pay this or get her to pay the $15. Because what does he do every other day? Is he always conning somebody into paying for him? And why would he need to do that if he's making $200 a day?
Yeah.
Off his $7.50 investment.
Now maybe the demand from the gerbils is only $200, so he can only do it once a day or on hot days or whatever. But yeah, why try to get free ice cream or popsicles when you're clearly going to make your money? And you've clearly got the money, unless you're making very poor decisions with the rest of what you do.
Right. Yeah. He drives this beat-up old van, and he says he's been making $200 a day since he was 12 years old. And we assume he's like, in his 20s or whatever. So he's been doing it for a long time. He's making $200 a day. So there's no so the script just falls apart a little bit there. It doesn't make any sense.
Unless the fox has got a coke habit.
It's not established that he has a coke habit. It's just established that he's like this kind of shady on the edges, the fringe economy character. And it's funny because then when the bunny cop is chasing after him, finds him like, aha, I got you red-handed selling these popsicles. When I blah blah blah, he's like, what do you got on me, lady? You got nothing on me. And she's like, well, you don't have a permit to sell those popsicles. And he's like, whips it out of his back pocket, permit right here. And then I forget what else she said. She also something else about transporting goods. You don't have a permit to transport goods or whatever that was. And he's like, boom, got it right here. You don't got nothing on me, lady. And so she has to coerce him with the threatening with the tax theft. But he even he goes through the effort to be a legitimate, get all this permitting and whatever crap, licensing and crap. But then he has some hustle to get a supply. It doesn't make any sense. It's more of a script, to entertain and not really think about too much. But here we are, tearing it apart, entertaining. Ooh, that's what we do.
Well, it's pretty common to mischaracterize capitalism as some evil thing where something bad has to occur, like someone has to be robbed in some way for it to work.
Yeah.
Zero-sum game and all that.
Right. And then later on, this is another problem I have with the movie. At first they think that they're following the otter, and they're trying to find out where he is. That's the missing persons case that she has. And she tracks it to a limousine service, or not a service, but a limousine owned by, like, the local mob boss, like the Mr. Big, and he's, like, this horrific mob boss, apparently. And turns out he's, like, this little mouse or whatever. And they're all afraid of him, and he's, like, this bad guy. He's obviously like a mob boss. He's like a, Don Corleone type. He's never established as a good person. But at one point, the bunny saves the life of his daughter, the mob boss's daughter, by grabbing this donut that was about to smash her. She's like this little mouse, and she grabs this giant donut. It's like this, not a real donut, like a sign for a donut shop. And then later on in the movie, there comes a point where they need to get information out of this guy, this thief who had stolen some of these crazy toxin flower things. And so they take him to the mob boss, who tortures him and, like, threatens to kill him. And that's, like, totally cool. And, like, that's what you do. I don't know. It was like, so now you're trying to sell this mob boss guy as, like, a good thing, and the bunny is the godmother to the mob boss's daughter's baby. And it's like, really? You don't have a problem with I don't know. The movie is just sending mixed messages for me. So,
wait. So brings this situation to the mob boss.
So in the beginning of the movie, she finds that she's threatened by the mob boss until the mob boss discovers that she saved the mob boss's daughter, and then she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, now we're friends." You're friends with a mob boss, and you have no problem with that. Then later on in the movie, they need to get some information out of a guy. They take him to the mob boss to threaten to murder the guy in order for him to talk. And that's like seen as like a totally normal, totally cool thing to do. And like everybody's friends with the mob boss now. And they go to like the wedding, like eat the cake and hang out with the mobsters. I don't know. It's just sending some mixed messages. What are you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me that mob bosses are just like misunderstood or whatever, and they're really just good people when they're threatening to kill people, and they almost were about to kill you? And when you need somebody threatened and tortured, or not necessarily tortured, but at least threatened with their life, you take them to a mob boss?
Yeah, they're sort of using them as an instrument, right? Like as a blunt instrument to get what they want.
Yeah, they have no problem using violence to get what they want.
That sounds like leftists.
Well, it's an SJW movie, so yeah, and it's justified by the means, baby.
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems to be the prevailing thought these days.
Yeah, it's when you don't have principles.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like leftists do not have any principles, because all of a sudden, they'll bitch about the Second Amendment, like guns are bad, but now they're complaining about Trump's not following the Constitution, he's not following the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, whatever.
Yeah, on one hand they'll say the Constitution is a dead document, who cares? But then when Trump gets in, they're like, well, he's got to follow the government of the Constitution. Blurb, blurb. Yeah. Then when they're taking, they want to eat it too.
Total hypocrisy. And
you're never going to get a clear message other than we want what we want, and don't you dare question us, and we will shout you down.
Oh man, the shouting down is ridiculous. Like, so Ben Shapiro, he's a good debater, and I enjoy him for his anti-SJW remarks, similar to Milo, though they do not get along. But he was pretty vocally anti-Trump for the leading up to the election, and now his talks at campuses are getting shut down because he's labeled as a Trump supporter, and it's hate speech, and there's threats of violence at his events, and there's protesters disrupting, and it's just crazy, And the protesters, the latest thing was at I think the University of Wisconsin. This was just the other day, and he had to allow the protesters to come up on the stage and chant for something like 20 minutes, even with the police there. Because if anyone were to get arrested, they would shut the event down. The university would shut the event down. So we had to let these idiots come up there and chant about safety. Like they would chant, safety, safety.
What's that supposed to mean?
I don't even know. I don't think they're trying out to be refs for the football team. I don't know if it's something to do with the safety pins. That's like a thing now.
What?
But you know about safety pins?
No, tell me.
Oh man! All right. So ever since the whole sea of liberal tears that we've been surfing on, or we surfed on for at least a day and a half, until that high wore off. So ever since then, all these SJWs have now, and liberals, but I digress, have been complaining about how LGBTQ XYZs are going to be rounded up into camps, and Muslims are going to be rounded up into camps, and all these terrible things are going to happen to people because white America is racist and has spoken, and anyone who's voted for Trump is evil.
Oh, yeah.
So, which is, why not?
Yeah, why not? Just double down on that narrative. Just triple down on it. Quadruple down on it.
Yeah.
Just go with it, man.
You fucking morons realize that's why he won, right? Because you're pulling this shit? And now you're going to double down. I mean, what do you want him to get reelected?
Yeah, people are sick of being called racists and bigots when they know they're not racists and bigots.
Right.
Anyway.
There certainly are some racists and bigots in the world, but not everyone.
And just because if you did support Trump, doesn't make you a racist and a bigot.
Yeah. So, God, what was my point?
Safety pin.
Safety pins. Okay, yeah. So, because everyone's afraid for their lives because of Trump, he's the incarnation of Hitler, apparently.
Yeah, he's literally Hitler.
He's literally Hitler. But, we have elections, and had he lost, he would have had to just accept it.
Yep.
No riots in the streets,
Yeah.
So the safety pin thing is a subtle message that people who are woke will send to people who are distressed or in fear as indicating that you are someone they can come to for assistance. If you're feeling threatened, they can come to you for help if you're wearing a safety pin.
So you put a safety pin on your jacket or your lapel or something,
yes.
and that's like a signal that you are a virtuous, enlightened individual that can provide comfort and safety in like a safe space for you if you're feeling threatened or triggered or something like that.
Right. If you are experiencing a moment of crisis because you're about to be rounded up into the camps, find someone wearing a diaper pin on their shirt instead of their diaper, and they will assist you.
Well, it's a free market solution. If it's a real thing, I'm all for it. Have your underground signals for when the death squads come, and go to people wearing diaper pins. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, as long as it is appropriate, right? I mean, they're whining about Trump winning. The SJW are all butthurt about it, and they're going to wear diaper pins.
Could they have come up with a more appropriate icon? Could they? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Be it straight up a diaper, a little bit like a binky. I'm sucking on a binky.
No, I think Coolio already had the market cornered on the binky.
Yeah, he made it uncool, I suppose.
Gangster's Paradise, didn't he have a binky in his mouth?
Mid-90s. Not in Gangster's Paradise, but I think in one of his videos he definitely did. Or he wore them on stage or something. I don't know. Who knows? That was a thing for a while. I think that was like the rave kids when they would like trip on acid or ecstasy.
Oh, yeah, or they drink that juice that would make them all get dehydrated and pass out.
Yeah. I want to say like they would like coat the binky in like acid and then just suck on that. I don't know. I never did it. I don't know. Don't take my word for any of that.
But it should totally be fine to do it.
Yeah, unless you're okay with putting a gun to their head to stop it.
Yeah, like every law should be presented that way. Like if you're willing to put a gun in somebody's face to tell them to not do this,
yeah.
You know, if you were the one holding it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there would be a whole lot less laws in the country, I think, if it was actually put down that way.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what actually happens.
So yeah, I think you're right. You know, the safety pin thing, as long as it's a free market thing, and you aren't aggressed upon for not wearing one, right? Like, do you remember the Seinfeld episode about the AIDS walk where Kramer goes to the AIDS walk and there's a little booth and he signs up and they're like, all right, you got to wear this ribbon. And he's like, I don't want to wear a ribbon. And they're like, no, you have to. You have to wear the ribbon to be a part of this. And he's like, well, that's why I don't want to wear it. And then this group of people start getting around him like, no, you have to wear the ribbon. You must wear the ribbon.
Jesus.
I'll post the clip down below, but it's pretty funny. So long as they're not in a position to where if I am walking around and I don't have a safety pin on me, people aren't like thinking I'm some kind of a fucking racist because of that, you know?
Right. Yeah, I'm totally okay with it. But yeah, there's a whole lot of anger and violence. Like, have you seen the all the attacks that have been happening around the country? I mean, there haven't been a whole ton that I've seen because, you know, not every attack gets videotaped. But there are attacks of people on, you know, Trump supporters or Trump voters or suspected Trump voters where they just get beaten up. Have you seen any of these videos?
Yeah, I saw the one down in Chicago. This older guy, white guy, was like got pulled out of his car and got beat up, and people were cheering it and saying, he voted for Trump, kick his ass, kick his ass. They're like kicking him in the face and punching him, and then they steal his car at the end.
Yeah, he gets like caught in the car and like dragged or something like that. Yeah, he gets like robbed and beat up, and then there are some other ones of students like at schools just get beat up for being like voting for Trump in like a mock election.
Yeah, there was the one kid who got kicked out of his own house. He's probably like 10 years old. His mom kicked him out of his house for fake voting for Trump. And literally told him to pack up his shit in a suitcase and get out. And videotaped it and put it on YouTube or Facebook Live or one of the two. And the kid's like crying. He doesn't know that it's not a real thing, you know, and she videotapes him all the way kicking him out the house, and he's walking down the sidewalk like crying about how his mom is, you know, what is he going to do? Where's he going to go? How's he going to eat? I mean, it's fucking torture, man. Like,
I'm sure she's a compassionate, caring lefty liberal.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. She's all about the social justice. But her own kid, she's threatening him with death. Right?
The kid that she raised. Yeah.
I mean,
how dare you have any thoughts other than what I think? How dare you?
That's one of the things like we've talked about with my wife and I with our kids. Like we will never tell them like, hey, we gotta go. All right, we're gonna go. See you later. Like at the grocery store or wherever. Like we're not gonna tell the kid ever that we're going to just abandon them there, right?
Yeah, I'd hope not.
Because if you're 3 years old or 5 years old, or maybe not by 10, but if you're young enough, you're going to take everything literally. Literally.
You are. You don't necessarily understand when a parent is joking, and you depend on your entire life depends on your parents at that point. That is so traumatic to say that all of a sudden you're thrown out and you have no support, and you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
Super terrible.
So that's just par for the course with the lefties. They are terrible.
Yeah, it's frightening. They claim that Trump is the next Hitler, and yet their behavior is highly intolerant.
Yeah, they're the ones shutting down free speech. It's not Trump. They're the ones being Hitler. They're the ones saying, you can't say this here.
Uh-huh.
We need to be protected from your words.
Yeah, there must be some sort of intellectual cover for these people, but because this is really being borne out, coming out of the educational institutions.
Yeah, well, there certainly is educational cover for this because most professors are leftists. They're socialists.
Right.
I don't know if there's like statistics on this, but the sociology and the gender studies and all of these things, they all are presented in lectures and in the courses with a very leftist bent. There are courses in the San Francisco public schools about how to, there's a whole curriculum about how to address your class with the fact that Trump won the election and how racist white America voted him in, and that their children's concerns need to be voiced and they can speak their mind, and if they swear a little bit, it's okay because they're underprivileged and they're scared for their lives, and promote them talking about their feelings and validate their feelings and all this stuff. Like there's actual curriculum that says this crap.
Yeah. Well, you've linked me websites where it's like we are social justice and we are teaching this and that, and it's no secret that most educational institutions are very left-leaning. I wish I could go back and take some of these classes and just be the lone voice of reason. I would love to do that. I'd be so hated. I would be so hated. Every time I open my mouth, people wish I'd just shut up. But to not let this bullshit get through would be really nice, or at least go unchallenged. Because right now
that's the problem,
it's
though.
Head and it's just gospel.
That's the problem, though. Like everything that you would say counter to them would be counted as a microaggression. No, and get this, it won't be long before that term gets morphed into it's an aggression, and therefore they're justified in responding with violence. That's where this is headed.
It seems to be. I hope not. I hope that is really frightening. If you don't go along with the narrative, you are an aggressor, and therefore they are right to use their violent attacks against you. That's a nightmare scenario Orwell never even envisioned.
Right, but did you just not say that there are all these videos about people who voted for Trump or supported Trump in some way, even in a mock election, and they're getting physically attacked?
They are. Now, to be fair, I don't know if it's the entire reason they're being attacked. Probably. It's right around the time, right after the election, and tempers are hot, whatever. If that's true, and that's what they're being attacked for 100%, then, yeah, obviously it's horrific. Well, it's horrific anyway. But, yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I mean, as an anarchist, I like to treat people as individuals. But it's hard to not see these movements happening of mass insanity. That is the social justice warrior, lefty, use violence to shout down any kind of opposing thoughts, to create these this childlike, put your fingers in your ears if anybody's saying a bad thing that you think is bad. It just happens to disagree with your opinion. I was watching a video the other day that was titled "Why I'm Not a Feminist," and there's a bunch of these videos on YouTube. You look at these there's obviously these are popular videos to watch because you'll see a channel with like 3,000 subscribers, but then they have a video titled "Why I'm Not a Feminist." They've got like 100,000 views, way outside of the norm of their channel.
You know what? I'm going to call this episode "Why I'm Not a Feminist" / Zootopia.
Exactly. We'll get more views. So the lady was telling her story about how she used to be a feminist and she used to be a social justice warrior, and it was like a hierarchy among social justice warriors about how, if you were a minority, if you were a woman, if you had been raped, if you had all these coins or chips to spend, that put you up higher. And when she kind of like stopped, getting out of her conditioning, and she would try and argue or even, come up with any kind of counterpoint, the person on the social justice side would say, well, it's not up for debate. It's just, it's not up for debate. My opinion is absolutely true. No, but, my feelings. So you can't invalidate my feelings by challenging my argument, because their arguments are tied to their feelings. It's an incredibly childish way to discuss anything. Like my feelings are tied 100% to my argument, and so if you challenge my argument, you are attacking me. And I guess that's where maybe microaggressions come from. I don't know. But it's a way to shut down any kind of debate and to ensure that you are in this bubble of I'm right, everyone else is wrong, and everybody else is a hateful misogynist bigot. It's really scary.
Right, and by the way, their argument is emotion.
Yeah. So it's how this is coming up through academia, where they're supposed to be smart. It's really sad. I mean, I understand that they get their, they're government workers. They are somewhat subject to the free market in that there are, they compete with other schools, I guess. But they are, generally you get tenure, and then how are they? You're really hard to get rid of, even if you're terrible. The whole thing is just really scary. Hopefully it stops and dies. There were there's some articles or some YouTube videos I've seen recently where people are complaining that there are too many anti-SJW videos on YouTube. And I'm like, really? First of all, SJWs are a thing now because they really exist, and they're really horrible. And they need to be challenged, and they need to be mocked and torn apart and made fun of, because they need to realize that this is an ideology that is very dangerous and
idiotic.
Yeah, just stupid. So I want to see more anti-SJW videos until it is buried. Like when I first started watching YouTube, it was basically atheism videos destroying religion. And I thought that they completely annihilated religion. And so you don't really see a whole lot of atheism videos anymore. There's a little bit, there's some. But a lot of the old atheist channels have kind of moved on to do other things, because it's like, well, we've done that. We've done all the arguments. We've destroyed it. And now they're moving on to the social justice stuff. And there's the claim that, you're only doing this because it's popular, or you're doing it for money or whatever. Well, I don't care what the reason is. SJWs are out to use violence to enforce their ideas on other people. And anything like that needs to be ridiculed and just destroyed. And there's a reason why a lot of those videos that say, hey, why I'm not a feminist anymore, why I'm not an SJW anymore, get a lot of views. Because it's nice to see converts. Because people that are in that bubble don't necessarily get challenged. A lot like, religious people that are in cults and deep in religion. They don't get their ideas challenged a lot. So when you do see somebody that's converted, it's interesting to see what their story was. What convinced them? What changed their mind? Are we having an effect? Are my arguments getting through to people? It's good and encouraging to hear.
Yeah, it brings to an idea to me that made no sense. But Facebook is essentially a echo chamber, and so is the mainstream media for all of this SJW pappy crap. And that's why everyone expected Hillary to win, the whole mainstream media and everyone on Facebook, and they were so surprised when Trump actually won. And it's because they're living in this echo chamber where they only hear arguments from others similar to themselves, and so they don't even realize that there's another side to the story. And I think that we were lucky to have gone to college when we did, because I'd be afraid of sending my kids to college today, like with all the bullshit that they're ramming down your throat, this whole SJW narrative. and your uncle, I think he had these same thoughts back when we were in school. But, I think we were able to break away from that indoctrination because, I don't know why we did. But I think it's even worse now. Like, it seems to be an increasing thing. And what you were saying about we need to bring the arguments to them and ridicule them and make them realize that they're being ridiculous and idiotic. So we almost have to, like, infiltrate their spaces so that the messages can be heard within their echo chamber, right? Because, like, they live in Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So you've got to put that message out there because they're not looking anywhere else.
Right.
So maybe this episode will be why we're not SJWs / Zootopia.
Yeah, why I'm not a feminist / SJW / Zootopia. P.S.
P.S. Crappy movie.
Yeah.
But, the whole SJW thing, like you were saying, it sounds like the premise of Zootopia was written from that perspective. Like, you're going to be put down because you're a woman, and there's different classes of people, and, there needs to be, like, reparations and corrections made by government to, like, level the playing field and all this garbage, all this nonsense.
Yeah, very much so. Watching the movie you just get this feeling there's this undercurrent of this was written by a younger person. This was written by one of these, if not outright SJW people. And like I said, there are other people involved. I mean, there are obviously hundreds of people involved, but it was written by, like, 2 people. And, you get this vibe that, and I just had this thought that, we're just going to be getting a lot more of this in the years to come. Hopefully this goes away, but I have a feeling we're going to be getting more and more of these themes running through our entertainment. If not, it's not already happening already. I mean, I don't watch TV, so there's a good chance, and I know you don't really either, so there's a good chance that this is already happening. There are probably already these themes out there. I'm sure people can enlighten us, but this is my first real experience with it. I mean, there have been plenty of left-leaning movies, and we've talked about them on this show. But this is the first real one that I've gotten this real SJW vibe from, and it was pretty scary. And it's not super overt. I'll give it that. Not super overt. I suppose you could be watching it as like a 5 or 6 year old and just getting a story about bunnies, being able to do what you want to do in life, which is a fine enough message. Work hard enough and you can do whatever you want. You can't necessarily be a 5 foot tall white guy on the New York Knicks, but essentially whatever. But yeah, this SJW thing is definitely a vibe that came out of this movie, and I was super happy about it.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to, like, totally take down SJWs, there's a whole bunch of compilation videos that are put together by people where they're taking clips from Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Gavin McInnes, and just taking these little, like, questions from SJWs, from transgendered folks or feminists, and then posting the response from one of those 3 people and, just destroying their arguments. It's pretty cool to see. So if you're interested in breaking down some of this stuff, check out those guys. They do it better than us, so I'll just refer you to the experts because they are great at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good SJW stuff on YouTube. Shoe on Head does a really good stuff, tearing down of feminists. Anyway, there's just, Anarchy Ball gets into it. Lots of people get into it. It's not hard to find. That guy T, he gets into it. And a lot of the fodder comes from places like, BuzzFeed is apparently run by a completely group of feminist SJWs. I don't know. It's like the asshole of the internet. Like HuffPo and these places. There's a lot of sources for this material that gets propagated out there. It's not hard to find.
Yeah, I would think it would be most of the mainstream media. Like, everything seems to be leftist these days.
It is. I mean, it's not necessarily all SJW stuff, but it's, pretty much all lefty.
Yeah. Well,
the SJW really seems to be coming out of the millennials. Seems to be. I mean, probably has some sort of intellectual cover from slightly older people, but...
Well, it does seem to get incrementally worse, like, through generations. Like, you'll see some of it, even in Red Dawn, he was like, when Charlie Sheen character was telling the girl that she needed to do the dishes because it's women's work, and she had that, like, if you tell me to do the dishes again, I'll fucking kill you. That was like a glimmer of that SJW feminist thing.
Mm-hmm. Like feminism has been around for a long time. I mean, it's been around for decades, and at first, and I'm an defender of equality. I don't believe in equality. I don't believe it exists. It doesn't exist in nature. So you chase after it is a fool's errand. We've talked about it on the podcast before. I mean, you don't even have temporal. You don't have any kind of. There's no kind of equality anywhere.
Yeah, the only equality would be in the right to not be messed with. Everyone should have that equally, and that's about it.
Yeah. Other than that, there's no such thing. So this, quest for equality is ridiculous. But I will say that when feminism first started out, I guess it was slightly more admirable, I suppose you could say. I mean, you actually had real things, like if you actually valued the right to vote, if you didn't see it as aggression, if you didn't see it as, forcing your will on your fellow man, and saying that, women didn't have the right to vote, so then getting it is a positive step, I suppose you could say. But this third wave feminism, where it's all about special rights and being protected and not ever being challenged and calling any kind of challenge of their argument harassment, changing video games so that, that's just the stupidest thing. They're like, the boobs in Tomb Raider are too big, and so then they change them. Oh, now what are you're making their boobs less big, so now you're defeminizing her? You can never win with these people. And it's all about inflicting their will on other people, right? So you got video games made by guys for guys, and then these feminists complain that they're not made for women. Well, excuse me for not making a thing for you. Why don't you make a thing for you? You want some feminist video game? Make it yourself. Right,
and anyone who's making something is just hoping that someone will want it.
Right. No guarantee.
no one's going to want everything, and no one's. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you make something, you're going to hope you get someone to want it. You're not going to be like trying to satisfy the needs of every possible person in every possible variant.
Right.
It'd be impossible.
It is impossible. You can't hope to please all the people all the time. That's just idiotic. If you end up trying to do that, you get some kind of mess of a movie, which you see in Hollywood all the time, where they're just nothing movies. They don't have a message of any kind. They've just been watered down and lowest common denominator, and there's all kinds of crap in it. And you're just like, what is this even? Anything? You can tell it was made by committee, like focus groups, written by focus groups. It's just idiotic and stupid. There's no guiding artist.
No, so it's like election cycle stuff. It's like presidential campaigns. Like everything's based on, well, this focus group said this, so we're going to have a position on that. And, this leaked question is about this other thing, so we better make sure that we say the right thing about this to get the vote.
Yeah, it's real bad. You try to please too many people and it ends up pleasing nobody. You can't worry about pleasing other people. So when these feminists and SJWs whine and complain about this thing that doesn't appeal to me for whatever reason, and so then it must have to appeal to me, so you need to change it. Well, fuck you. I made a thing. I made it for myself. I hope other people dig it. But you didn't dig it? Oh, well. What are you, some child that says you have to have it your way because, women aren't represented enough? There's all these movies that are made these days that are made by committee that are casted by committee. Like saying, well, we would like to hire the best possible actor for this part, but we don't have enough Asian people in the movie, so we need to have an Asian person or two, so you better hire an Asian actor for this part. There's a whole lot of that going on. And in fact, you listen to people like Kevin Smith, who's like, generally a funny guy. You like to listen to him a bit, but he's a bit SJW when it comes to that. He'll be like, why aren't there more black people in movies, and why aren't there more black, feminist women in parts and whatever? It's like, well, if you want those parts in those movies, well, write parts in those movies for those people. But don't complain about other people and their artistic endeavors.
Right, especially if they're all trying to gain an audience and trying to figure out, like, okay, what's somebody going to want to be willing to watch and pay for?
Right, you're spending other people's money. I mean, they're doing the best they can to satisfy their own artistic desires and hopefully satisfy a market. Anyway, it's something that'll take care of itself. If there are enough demand for more black actors in movies or more women actors in movies or whatever, audiences will respond to that and go to see those movies. Anyway, it's a real dumb complaint that these SJWs make all the time, and it affects Hollywood. And then they'll cast, and you'll look at a cast, a movie poster for a movie, and you're like, well, that looks like a Benetton ad. And then you got one Indian guy, you got a Japanese person, you got an Asian person, you got a white person. It's just like, okay, So
and someone in a wheelchair, right? You got to have that.
Yeah, right. You got to do someone with a disability. And it's like, really? Was that the writer, or was that the studio executives going, I think we need to brown this movie up a little bit? It's just like, okay. So, all right.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a long time. They're like, I was saying, our kids, they watch Clifford the Big Red Dog, and that was made almost 15 years ago, and they'll bring in the occasional, like, three-legged dog or the kid in the wheelchair. And then there's like, the whole, Benetton variety of cast characters, just because they have to be inclusionary and show the diversity. Isn't
it diversity and inclusion at some point, isn't it just tokenism? And that's what South Park was making fun of when they named a black character Token. It's like they'll throw these characters in just because they are. It's like affirmative action.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were throwing in these characters not because they're like the best characters, not because it was written by a black guy or whatever, but because we needed a black guy, because inclusion. Because
racism. Actually.
Yeah, because we don't want to seem racist.
So we'll be racist to not seem racist.
Right.
We will choose people and characters based on their race alone
right?
to show that we're not racist.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's like, what is all this racism? You've got one of each. Real dumb. Yeah. I don't know anybody that, anyway.
Well, this goes back to that argument of you need to pay a little bit of protection money, give up a little bit of your private property rights to protect the rest of your property rights. It's similar to this whole racism thing. Like, you have to actually demonstrate racism by selecting people to be, whatever, hired or in your movie based on their race alone to show that you're not racist. You have to be racist to show you're not racist.
Yeah, just like, universities where they have affirmative action and they hire people and they accept people just because they have a certain ethnicity, not because they're the best candidate, not because they have the best GPA, just because. And that is essentially the definition of racism, right? Almost.
Right, and then there's a whole swath of people who are more qualified who didn't make the cut because there's limited resources.
Right.
And so they don't get in, even though they had better scores or better whatever, but because they're the wrong skin color, they don't get in.
Yep. Feels good, doesn't it? And then they'll say, well, that's fine and normal because you can only be racist if you're white. So, since you're in position of power, you're in the race of position of power, whatever that means. Since you happen to be white, and white is supposedly top dog right now, whatever that means, you should be okay with it, even though you just lost that part.
Right, but what about Asians? Because they do better than whites, and no one's complaining about that. And then what about...
Daniel, listen, it doesn't make any sense, Daniel. You're supposed to go along with it in today's insane world.
Another Shapiro point was he was talking about black kids who are growing up and going to college, and if they enter a two-parent household, the poverty rate was like 7%. But white kids going to college in single-family homes were 22% in the poverty rate. So where's the white privilege there? Like, if race was the determining factor, then it wouldn't be, 22% poverty for the white and 7% poverty for the black.
Yeah, and
it's the two-parent family. That's the deal. It's not a race thing. It's a situation thing, right? If the family stays together, they will very, very unlikely be in poverty.
Yeah, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but racism seems to be a catch-all explanation when you don't have a better answer. And there are better answers. You're just, lazy. So when...
Well, the whole, everyone who voted for Trump is a racist thing is,
right.
so nonsense.
Yeah, you got Hillary saying, well, why did I lose? Oh, because America's racist.
Says the old crotchety white woman who's in the back pocket of Wall Street.
Right. So, yeah, everybody's racist or sexist or bigoted or misogynist or whatever. That's just the easy fallback answer that's hard to dispute. So they just say that. So anyway, yeah, it's real bad. Really bad, Dan.
Yeah. Well, hey, friends, if you want to have actual solid answers to all of these leftist non-arguments, check out Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom. This upcoming weekend, Black Friday weekend, there's going to be a special. I think the number is going to be something like 40% off. Check it out. It's super good. We have it ourselves. I enjoy it. I took it on a trip with me. I just downloaded the audio MP3s to my phone in this app called Music Player Free, and I was able to actually play back at a higher speed, so I'd get through more and more of the content at a faster rate. So check it out, readrothbard.com/Liberty Classroom, and you'll save some big bucks this weekend, upcoming weekend.
Do it. Sounds great.
Yes, let's wind this one down, Robert. I think we touched on Zootopia just enough to still leave it in the title of the episode, but I think it's going to be why we're not SJWs or something along those lines / Zootopia. I think that'll work.
Yeah, I think we should do some more of a clickbaity type of title where you briefly mention a thing, but then that can be the title of your thing as long as it's like a popular title. It's good.
Yeah, I do think we need to start thinking about what's going to get us more of an audience, because we get, a half dozen views now, which is nice. Feels good. Oh, and I did want to call out a special someone. There is a special someone out there who actually bought something via one of our Amazon links.
Nice.
And so I appreciate that. Thank you very much for doing that. That's one of the first points of validation we've received in the 6 or 7 months we've been doing this. So it's a big deal. It's like that first dollar you make when you open a restaurant and you frame it, you put it on the wall.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you are our first Amazon purchase. You're going on the wall, man, or woman, or non-binary cis transgendered Ewok.
Attack helicopter.
Attack helicopter. Walmart gift card.
That's right. Whatever you identify as.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't give a shit what you identify as, so long as you clicked on that link and bought something and we made like $1. That's what we care about. We care about that dollar. So thank you very much.
Indeed.
All about those Benjamins, Johnson.
You greedy capitalist.
All right, let's wrap this one up. We have been the Read Rothbard Podcast. We got books, lectures, articles, this podcast, a bunch of other goodies at readrothbard.com. Also, Black Friday weekend for Tom Woods' Liberty Classroom. readrothbard.com/Liberty Classroom. Check it out.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this late episode. And take care of yourself.
Peace out, everybody.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.